So here's the thing. I was incredibly pleasantly surprised at how much I loved War of the Rohirrim. Let's talk about it. Before we get started, I want to say a hello and welcome all. This is Eclectic Kelpi, where we dive into the treasure trove of fantastical media, and if you know where the horse and the rider are, charge into that subscribe button so you can join us on our adventures. Now, this is going to be a spoiler review of War of the Rohirrim, so if you haven't seen it yet and you want to keep some of the surprises, then save this video for later. But without further ado, let's dive into the episode. So, genuinely, there was, very few things that I didn't enjoy about War of the Rohirrim, and I am obsessed with the Lord of the Rings, and very much a Tolkien purist in the sense of, his world it has to be maintained pristine. This is why I don't particularly enjoy the Rings of Power, but this, War of the Rohirrim, was such a perfect example about how you can take a small piece of the appendices from The Return of the King and then make it into something so incredible and feel very like a concise, beautiful story, which was just so well done. So I guess we'll start with the things that I didn't enjoy because there's so very few of them. And then we'll go into all of the positives because there's just so much good stuff to say about it. So what I didn't particularly enjoy, the Watcher in the Water in Fangorn Forest. Incorrect. There is just the one in the Mines of Moria, just outside of the entrance. We see it in the Fellowship of the Ring. There's just the one. I'm assuming that this is Fangorn Forest just based on the geography of Rohan in general, so it shouldn't be there. It didn't need to be there. Throw her away. We don't need that. It was cool, but it's not supposed to be there. And that's really nitpicky, but unnecessary. I didn't like the insertion of Hera going to see Gandalf at the end. It felt like a very forced Fellowship of the Ring connection, very unnecessary. Let her have her own story. It doesn't need to be connected to the grand world, because there is so much in the Silmarillion, which obviously they can't utilize because they don't have, nobody has the rights to it, and I'm going to be making a video about that another time. But as for right now, speaking on this, let it be its own condensed story. It was very well done as a condensed story. You don't have to have Gandalf and Saruman popping in there, and you don't have to have, bigger world connections. Gandalf doesn't have to pop in everywhere just to be oh, look, this is Lord of the Rings. We know. We get it. Thank you. It was great. We don't need him. I also wasn't a huge fan of how they did Helm Hammerhand in the, turning into one of the Nazgul wraiths. I think that if they were going to do that, they really had to commit to doing that, and I kind of understand, it is a very substantiated theory that Helm Hammerhand is one of the 9 ring wraiths. And I do appreciate that they touched on it, and you can kind of see, his eyes glow a little bit when he's, in wraith mode, and, there's things that, are implications that he turns into a wraith, but I feel if they were going to do that, then they should have committed to making him a wraith, and I understand why they didn't necessarily do that, but also it just felt very, a weird, throwaway point where they were trying to do something, but they didn't have time to develop that point, so they kind of half did it. It just didn't work out. If they were going to want to share that kind of connection to Helm being one of the 9, then just commit to it. Otherwise, I think that it was a fun, point that they were attempting to make, but they could have done a lot better with it, and so it's not my favorite, but I think that they could have made that a really fun part of the show. But that's literally it for the things that I didn't enjoy. Overall, this was such a good movie, and I was so pleasantly surprised, and I really enjoyed it. So the things that I did like. 1, it felt like Lord of the Rings. What was so cool is that they had all of Alan Lee's and John Howe's art that they utilized, and it was so much and Peter Jackson, of course, being an executive producer on this show, as well, was able to, here's all of the things that he kept everything from the trilogy movies. So all of the designs for Edoras, like the entire environment, like it felt very Lord of the Rings. Howard Shore's music, Howard Shore was just amazing. It just felt very like integrated. I love the songs that they added as well, like, you know, at the beginning, like Hama's song, and it just felt very Lord of the Rings, very in-universe, very like epic and grand and wonderful. And I loved that it felt like it was a real Lord of the Rings piece of content, which was just fantastic. The animation and landscapes, I mean, I guess little nitpick was that the landscape and the design of the environments were so beautiful and so well done. The animation of the people didn't really match. It was there was such a juxtaposition of the landscapes looking like one art style and then the people looking like very anime, and it didn't really meld that well. But I think that overall the animation was very beautiful, and the environments were really the thing. And I mean, Tolkien's whole stories are about environment and about setting, so it just was beautiful and made so much sense to spend so much time and energy on setting the stage for the world in which we were going to explore. So that was perfect. It very much gave like super well done historical fiction. Again, because they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion and they don't have the ability to explore a lot of Tolkien's extended universe in a lot of detail outside of just using the Return of the King's appendices. It just, I don't know. I think they did a fantastic job with what they were given and what they were allowed to play with, which was just so well done. Like, it felt like very good historical fiction because Hera's not a real descendant, or at least she's not a real named descendant. She doesn't actually exist within the Tolkien canon. So overall, I think that they did a fantastic job at like creating, here's this story, here was the long winter, here was this battle with the Dunlandings, and it just was very well done. Like, it felt very in place, very like authentic to the world. I think that that's just the biggest point on the whole of the movie. It felt Lord of the Rings, it felt in the world. Love it. Also, point, my one and only tattoo thus far. I plan on getting more, but I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings, so I don't know, it really like hit very well. It was very emotional. For a lot of War of the Rohirrim, it was very well done. I think that the dialogue was amazing. Some of the lines were just perfect. Like, at the end, when Hera is like coming out, she's in the white dress, and Wolf goes like, oh, you're coming to me as a bride. She's like, nah, I'm not pledged to any man. And he's like, well, who are you pledged to then? And she just says death. And it just hits so well. A lot of the dialogue in this movie is just so well done, well written, very on point, and like perfectly executed. I think that the voice acting for some of the characters might have been a little bit over the top, but as a whole, I think that the dialogue itself, as written, beautiful. Very well done. I loved that they got Billy Boyd, Miranda Otto, and Dominic Monaghan to come and do little cameo pieces in this movie. I loved the two little orcs. They were so fun. Very, like, on brand for Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd to come back and do that kind of thing. And Miranda Otto was just, like, you could picture, like, Éowyn sitting down with, like, her great-grandchildren and telling this story of her, like, super past ancestor, and just being there and experiencing that moment as she's trying to, like, recount this story. Because it wasn't well documented, it wasn't written, it even says, and I really love that they did that as well, because you can think about it as, like, an auditory storytelling, which is very, like, on brand for the culture of Rohan. It feels like that's more their speed, is like verbal storytelling. And because it literally, she's not written down, she's not a real character in the Tolkien world, so it feels very much like that is a beautiful way to explain like, oh, she's not going to be written in any history, but here's what she did and here's how she was so important to our people before the second line of kings began. So very well done. Loved the strong characters. So good. So good. I also really appreciated that Wolf never, like, underestimated her. Like, Hera was a very strong character. She just was. It is beautiful that she's a strong female character, but she was just a strong character. And yes, her being a woman does play a part in the sense of, like, marriage and bloodlines and alliances and stuff, but she's just allowed to be a character, and she's amazing. And the dynamic between the two antagonists, like how Hera and Wolf interact with each other, is just very well done. I loved to see that kind of dynamic be played out, and they did it very well. Overall, just the entire movie, the environment, the characters, the music, the like feelings of being in Middle-earth and just connecting with this kind of condensed story from the extended universe of Tolkien was just so well done. And I hope that we can see more of that kind of thing in the future, because love Lord of the Rings, want to see more of it. Just, I don't know. I'm going to talk about Rings of Power another time, but War of the Rohirrim was fantastic, and I highly recommend it. It was so beautiful. Yeah. And those were just some of my observations for Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Feel free to share your opinions down in the comments below. We can have a nice discussion about what you think was really good or what you think wasn't so good in War of the Rohirrim. Thank you all so much for watching. Everything with love, and we'll see you next time in the Treasure Trove. Bye!